Hey everybody, Mr. Regan here, and today we're going to be looking at how to complete our adaptive population writing activities that we're going to be doing here in the next couple tasks. We're going to look at how we should be kind of analyzing our histograms, and along with that, how we're going to use our vocab words to answer that big focus question that we have in our targets for today. So if you remember at the start of the lesson, we talked about this big question about why the distribution of traits change in a population. And we're going to be using some evidence found in some histograms about a specific population from our simulator, along with some environmental evidence that kind of help us answer that question, along with using some of those important vocab words. So let's go ahead and take a look at how we're going to do this. In front of you, you'll see a few things. Number one, you'll see our histogram here, which has all of our information that we're going to need to use to answer this big question. How can you explain why the distribution of traits changed in this population? We have our vocabulary words that we're going to be using here. We have adaptive trait, distribution, environment, non-adaptive trait, and variation. And then over here, in a little bit, you're going to see kind of how we can go about answering this question utilizing everything you see in front of you. So first and foremost, let's look at how to analyze our histogram here. You'll notice at the very top that it'll tell you how many generations have passed between the first to last set of variations within this population's trait, and it will tell you what population we're working with. So in this case, we're looking at the Australopes color, okay? And you can see, based on the X and Y axes of our graph, that we're using 0 to 100 in terms of the number of Australopes, and then we have blue to yellow. That means somewhere in the middle we have our green Australopes, and each bar with the lines on it represent our distribution in the earlier generations, and then obviously that big gray or blue line there represents the traits at the end of the 50 generations. Last but not least, down here, you're going to see that we have some information about the environment and the population themselves. So starting population, they had many colored variations. So they had traits, So they had a high variation. We can see that they have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, all the way to 9 different variations of color, okay, all ranging from blues to greens to yellows. The ending population, on the other hand, had all yellow 7 traits, okay, so they had no variation. They only had this one trait found in the entire population. So last but not least, if we look down here, it said environment changed to a yellow level 7 surface color and included predators. So hopefully that sounds familiar from what we did in our simulator in past lessons. But our job now is to take all of this information and ask ourselves, how can I explain why the distribution of traits changed in the population? So first we have to kind of identify the change. Okay, we started with high variation and we had a very low distribution here, and it changed to no variation with a high distribution. We have to kind of also explain this big idea as to why the distribution changed. So let's go ahead and take a look as to what a good response to this question would be. So starting at the very beginning, remember, I'm trying to pull in all these vocabulary words. I'm trying to use all the evidence from the histogram and down here, along with answering our big focus question. So first and foremost, the Australope population started with that high variation of traits for the fur color, and after 50 generations had no variation, okay? Pulling in all that information, taking a look at what my bars show, and then kind of explaining that with our 2 big vocab words. So we had variation to start, along with generation, but that's not obviously on our list. Next, the distribution. There's my next vocab word. The distribution shows the Australopes started with a low distribution of all the colors. They did. They had all these colors, but very, very low, all under 20 in terms of the groups of all the colors, and then ended with a high distribution of that yellowish green trait. Okay, I can even say that trait number 7 in the entire population. So remember, these are the entire population. The yellowish green fur color was the adaptive trait. Notice I'm pulling in my next vocab word, okay? This is our adaptive trait because this is the trait that allows them to survive the best, because there were predators eating the Australopes. We can see that here, included predators eating the Australopes, and only those with fur to match the color. Oops, that should be of their environment could survive. Okay. So we have variation, we have distribution, we have adaptive traits, okay, and we just put in environment. So notice, folks, okay, I'm pulling in 1, 2, 3, 4 of our 5 vocabulary words. I've begun explaining kind of two big things. Number one, what we see here, and number two, what's causing this change to start. So we're showing in this second part that cause and effect relationship. Okay, what's causing the change in those traits. This last part is what's going to explain not only what caused this change, this high distribution here, but now what caused all of these to go away. Because notice we have two big changes. We have this distribution go from really low to really high, and we have the absence now of all of these variations. Okay, so we have to kind of explain both. All the other Australope fur colors were non-adaptive, okay, non-adaptive traits, and died out because they could not camouflage with their environment. Okay, I can even add on here, not camouflage with their environment, and they were dying out because they couldn't camouflage with their environment and were getting eaten by the predators. Okay, now this is a really great 1, 2, 3, 4 paragraph or 4 sentences, I should say, to make one big paragraph. I've pulled in all of my vocabulary words. I've answered all of my questions here, and I've explained all of the big ideas that we see based on the evidence provided. So that's how we go about using our histogram and our vocabulary words to answer that big question. And here's a great example as to how we kind of analyze and respond to that focus question. So next, your job is going to be to do that survey. Remember, if you put your X in the yellow or the red section, please make sure you check in with me so that we can definitely kind of identify things that we're not understanding or where we're going wrong. Last but not least, task 4 and 5 is where we're going to practice exactly what we just looked at. So if I'm looking at task 4, you'll notice our histogram here. You'll notice the question that we had to answer and where we're going to be putting our response here in this section. And then if we drag this up, we can see we have all of our vocab words. If any of these vocab words are unfamiliar to you or you're unsure of them, we have this Quizlet link here. And if we can't quite read our graph here or any of this information, I highly recommend we hit the present button so that we can kind of see everything in a bigger view and allow us to kind of read through that information. That bar will go away kind of as we leave our mouse alone. So folks, if you have any general questions, please reach out to me. Otherwise, good luck with task number 4 and task number 5 with all of our different histograms, and I'll see you on our check-in.